amazing introduction, Kevin. And firstly, thank also to Usha and Hassan for inviting me to speak today, and to USI and NSTEP for giving me the opportunity to speak here today. And I'd also like to thank you, all you listening. I hope you got a little bit of a stretch there and going through the breakout rooms. Maybe you could just take a minute to just stretch and shake it off, because I know how difficult it can be sitting through these things. So if you want to just take a minute, take a breath, stretch yourselves out, because I do know how difficult it can be sitting through these things. And I hope you'll all still be listening at the end of my comprehensive 2-hour presentation. No, I'm only joking. Also, can I just say you're all looking lovely today, everyone that I can see. I'd like to just mention, like Tom's, just reflecting on what Tom was speaking about. I think it's really important, because Tom mentioned how lonely a place it can be being a student rep, and I can really identify with that from being a class rep for the 4 years. But he also mentioned about the idea of community and the idea of partnership, and I really like that idea. So it's really nice to be here in our little kind of virtual community of people who are as passionate about the student voice. So I would encourage you all today to do as Tom said and reach out to each other, reach out to your student unions, reach out through NSTEP and USI, and create that kind of support network and an idea exchange platform, because there is great ideas come together from a wealth of knowledge. I suppose just mentioning Tom, I probably should have linked in with Tom, because I have a couple of questions now for you. They're quite the same to the ones that Tom had, but sure, look, these things happen, and there's a different reason, I suppose, for me asking these questions. So I might just share my screen. So I just ask you if you could go to menti.com and enter the code 8835792 into the box, and you can answer this question. And I'll just give a couple of minutes there just to allow people to get the time to get there and enter the code and enter some answers. Now don't worry, the answers aren't going to pop up on the screen, because we're going to come back to them later. So I'm just looking at asking you to name some of the issues facing you as individuals, as students, as reps, or in general at the moment. And if you can enter them in, that'd be brilliant. And we could just give it another minute or so just to give people time to do that. And thank you very much for your participation in this. It's very much appreciated. Just a couple of seconds before I move on to the next question. I think everyone has had a bit of time to enter their answers onto that. If anyone wants to, another minute or so, I think you'll still have the option to type in. And the second question you'll see there, I'm asking, and again, I know Tom discussed this, so this isn't a test. This isn't to see like how much you can remember from Tom's presentation or what you have discussed in the breaker room. This is just for me, I want to know what, in your opinion and your words and your experience, what is the student voice? So again, I'll just give another couple of minutes there. As I say, it's not a test, and I probably should have linked in with Tom to see what questions or what he was doing, but look, we are where we are. And feel free to use some of the wonderful answers that came up when Tom discussed this in his presentation. Okay, I'm going to just stop sharing my screen. I'll give it another minute just to allow people the opportunity to input their information to answer the questions. And you can still do so while I'm chatting if you want. So thanks very much for getting involved in answering those questions, and I will come back to them in a few minutes, but first of all I'd like to just tell you all a little story. So I'm going back to it when I was in 4th class, which is quite a while now, but I had a really horrible, awful teacher, and don't worry, I'm not going to name her, But she really didn't like me. And she didn't not like me because I was like rude or cheeky or anything like that. I was actually quite a good kid, well, at least in school. I'm sure my mum would say I was a brat at home, but like in school, I really liked school and I really enjoyed school. But the reason she didn't like me was because I questioned things. Like I wanted to know why things were the way they were and how they worked, and pretty usual kind of stuff, I suppose, for like a 10-year-old, if I'm being honest, like looking back. But this teacher was very old school, and I think that phrase is used a lot to get people out of things. But she really was, she was a bit of a tyrant. Children should be seen and not heard. Speak when you're spoken to. It's the way it is because I'm telling you so, and if you question it, you're in trouble. That was kind of her teaching style, which I hope is long gone in the classrooms nowadays. But it was maybe more commonplace when I was in 4th class. And she was, she also picked on one of the nicest girls in class, like really, like even nicer than me. It's hard to believe, but like this girl wasn't questioning things or outspoken. She was very quiet, very introverted, very shy, a really, really lovely girl. And she struggled a bit academically, which I think is why the teacher picked on her. I'm looking back as an adult, I think there might have been like a slight learning difficulty that hadn't been, picked up on, and that was just ignored, and that was why she was picked on, was that she maybe wasn't as good in the academic side of things in the class. But for whatever the reason, like that teacher just disliked her and picked on her immensely, and I hated it. Like, and my mum had always taught me to stand up for someone if I seen them being bullied. But I suppose when she was telling me that, she probably wasn't thinking it was going to be by a teacher, in fairness, like. So I did what I had been taught to do. I spoke up when I could and stuck up for her, especially when it was done blatantly. Like if she was blamed for doing something she didn't do, I'd be like, no, teacher, it wasn't her, it was me, or it was, I would stand up and do that. So between that and me asking questions, you can probably guess I was in trouble a lot with this teacher, right? I was sent to the back of the class facing the wall all the time. And worse than that, I was sent into the next classroom. In fact, I think I probably spent more of that 4th class year in the other classroom than in my own. And the funny thing about that was the classroom that I was sent to would turn out to be the teacher I would have the following year, which meant that I was terrified starting in 5th class, because I thought she's gonna like hate me, she's gonna think I'm so bad. I was in her class, I was always just sent into her class for being in trouble, and she's gonna think I'm the worst in the world. And I was right. From me spending half my time in her class and the staff room chatter, she did think that, and she told my mother that at a parent-teacher meeting, that she was expecting me to be a right little I'm going to use the word madam. She used a stronger word, but that's what she told me, mum, she was expecting. But to my mother's relief, and mine, she told me, mum, that I was a great kid, and she loved how inquisitive I was, and it just shows the different teaching styles there. She was a bit younger than that teacher, and maybe more different kind of ways of approaching things, but she loved the inquisitiveness, and she loved to see like that I stood up for other kids, and she said like she hoped I wouldn't lose that and I'd stay that way, like and she was a wonderful teacher. And I will name her Miss McGuire. She was fantastic because she was brilliant and she deserves recognition. I'd love to reach out to her and find her and tell her how the impact she had. But you know what, even that, it didn't make me go back to how I was, I suppose. The damage kind of had been done, and despite that teacher like really being such a great teacher, like, and the complete opposite of the previous one, like I went through the rest of my school years not really putting myself forward for things that were important, and not really getting involved and not really like speaking up, because I always had that feeling of not belonging. I always felt like that kid in the back of the next door teacher's classroom, not where I was supposed to be, and I think nowadays we talk about it a lot as like imposter syndrome, and Tom referenced it, in his presentation earlier on when he talked about alienation and that sense of being somewhere you don't belong, and I carried that with me like through my school years, and I didn't get involved, I didn't speak up, and I didn't use my voice. But I suppose where things changed for me was when I decided to return to education as a mature student, and I know Kevin mentioned that earlier on. But when I was going back to the Liberties, I made a conscious decision like that I was going to do things I wanted to do in school but never felt comfortable or able to do because of those feelings I was carrying with me. I was going to do things differently and like push myself out of my comfort zone a little bit. So when I started in the Liberties, I heard this phrase, class rep. And I was like, I'm going to put myself forward for that. That sounds like something I'd have loved to do but never did. So I did. I put myself forward, not thinking I'd get it, but because I had made that promise to myself to push myself out of my comfort zone and to push my boundaries. So I thought, look, if I don't get it, doesn't matter. I've ticked that box. I've pushed them boundaries. You know, I put myself out of the comfort zone, done that, marked that off, and then I can just like slide on through. You know, but as I did get elected class rep, and I was absolutely delighted that my class chose me, and it kind of really helped my confidence grow that year. Just even put myself forward and being elected. So that little spark of confidence and that little bit of experience, when I went on to start my degree in TU Dublin on the Tallaght Campus, I put myself forward for class rep again. And again was delighted when the class chose me, and I suppose I must have done something right, because despite my attempts to hand the baton over and give someone else a go, every year they chose me for the 4 years of my degree, and I loved it. You know, I say that jokingly, but I wouldn't change things. But over those 4 years that I was class rep, my confidence in myself grew. You know, I got involved with the student union, I got involved in class rep meetings, I got involved in the student council and other things within the college. I went to boards and programme boards and review boards, and had meetings with lecturers, had meetings with heads of department, you know, all these things on behalf of my class. So like I had well and truly found my voice, and my God, I used it by doing all those things. Like anything that needed to be spoken up on, I did. Now it wasn't always easy, you know. You have that feeling when, especially when you're going to things like programme review boards and you're sitting there, you do have that feeling of alienation or in being in someone else's territory. But I did it, and with every little thing I did, my confidence kind of grew and grew. And now in my current role in the Students Union, I'm sitting on boards and committees, you know, at the next kind of level up, raising issues across our campuses, facing students, and fighting for the students, like fighting for their rights. So I wouldn't have got to that if I hadn't have taken all those kind of small steps, I suppose. So you're probably wondering, like, okay, that's all great, Lesley, well done, but like, why are you telling us this? But the reason I wanted to tell you that story is there's two things I want you to get from it. Firstly, there will always be people, no matter what role you're in or what stage of your life you're at, who will try and mute your voice, who don't want to listen, who don't want to be questioned, who don't want to hear what you're saying. And secondly, that doesn't change the fact that you have something to say. You're all in various positions here today, you know, student representation. Some of you are dealing with lecturers or other staff or senior management. And all those people that you're dealing with know far more about their roles and like what they're teaching and that side of things than you. And that's fine, because that's how it's supposed to be. But the one thing that they don't know, the one thing that you are the expert in, you're all experts in your own experiences and those of your peers. Like, you're all the experts in what it's like to be a student today. Not like 10 years ago, not 2 years ago, because I mean, even 2 years ago things were different. You all know what it's like to be a student today. So I'm going to just go share my screen again, and hopefully this will work. And just bear with me for a moment, and I will... There we go. So I'm just going to share my screen with you again briefly. So if we look there, you can see I asked what were the issues facing students today, and we have some wonderful answers there. And it's very important. You've done something amazing there, because you've just all demonstrated and proved my point. So thanks very much for that, because that could have went horribly, horribly wrong. You've all just demonstrated your expertise and proved my point there. You know, and when we look at, again, sorry, I've lost my presentation. I'm going to go back to it. When we look at the next question, and this is really important. Sorry about this. You'd think we'd be used to this technology at this stage, But sure, look, when you look at this next question, like, what is the student voice? Well, first of all, we're going to just slip back to this one for a minute. I could have asked that question, like this could have been a presentation to a room full of academic teaching staff or boards and management or whatever. And I could have asked this question and they could have all come up with the same answers. You know, it's very possible, it's plausible, it's likely, but they wouldn't be coming at it from the lived experience that you are. You know, anybody can give these answers, but it's a very different thing knowing what students are going through at the moment and actually experiencing it and living it now and going through it. You know, it's a very, very different experience. And I hope you can see now the second slide here where I have this student voice. I'm just going to make that on bigger so we can kind of see some of the things. So I'm just looking here. There are some really brilliant answers there. Empowerment, representation, feedback, speaking up. I see my name there. Thank you very much, whoever said that. Me. Now, I'm going to stop sharing my screen because whoever said that, give that person a can of Coke. I don't know, that's a throwback to the Coca-Cola factory tours. But whoever said that, that's a gold star because they're all absolutely excellent answers. And the responses, and not that any of them are wrong, there's no right or wrong, but the most important one on that board is you. You all here today, you are the student voice. I cannot say that enough. Of course, without a shadow of a doubt, you'll learn some wonderful things from this summit, from Tom's presentation earlier, and ongoing engagement with NSTEP and USI trainings and ways you can use and utilise your voice on a local and national level. But I'm going to be honest with you, that's going to be about as much use to you as a chocolate teapot if your voice is muted. Like, there's no use in sitting through things and taking it if you're not using your voice. As I say, chocolate teapot. So I thank you all for your patience and your involvement. I will be finishing up in a moment. If anybody has any questions, whether it's practical tips or raising an issue or approaching a subject, I'm more than happy to take them. Pop them into the chat or directly chat to me, that's fine. Or if you want to unmute and ask a question at the end, that's absolutely whatever is most comfortable for you. If you do have any questions, what I will say is, if you do have any questions, please do ask them. I'm not suggesting for a minute that I have all the answers. There's amazing people here today who may have some of the answers, but please don't be afraid to ask because again, going back to them feelings that I would have carried with me, I've sat in things like this before and kind of been thinking, oh, I really want to know this, that, and the other, but I don't know whether I can ask it or not. And one thing I will say is I've never regretted asking a question, and that's the truth. I've regretted not asking a question because I've been like, oh, I wanted to know that, and then I'll go off and I'll try and find the answer somewhere, or I'll reach out to the person, or I'll do a bit of research. But because I've regretted not asking a question, but I have never regretted asking a question. So take that with you as well, and never be afraid to ask a question. But with that being said, I'm conscious of your time, and your time is precious. Time is a precious commodity. So I'm going to finish now with 4 statements. And these are the statements that I really want you to listen to. If you have a paper or ever take notes, write them down, underline them, and really take them to heart going forward, because I think if you take nothing else away from anything else that I have said, these are the things I'd like you to take with you. Firstly, your contributions matter. Your experiences matter. Your voice matters. So never be afraid to use it.